Hello, everybody. How are you all doing? Welcome to our conversation and discussion on kidney disease. This is an interactive and elaborate conversation that is centered around kidney disease in particularly the Black community, as well as in communities of color and minority communities. I'm so delighted to be here. My name is Pastor Marlin Harris, and I'm the pastor of New Life Church, and I am presenting this discussion, our church is, in collaboration with some amazing and wonderful partners. They are the HEAL Collaborative, Neph Cure, Kidney International, Vertex Pharmaceuticals, Travere Therapeutics, as well as Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals. We are delighted to bring you this discussion. Please sit back, join with us for the next several minutes as we talk about something that is so important and critical to our community. Let me begin by telling you who's going to be in the conversation. First of all, we are happy to have Miss Sabrina Box, Minister Sabrina Box, who is serving as our moderator today, as well as Dr. Jason Cobb, who is the Associate Professor of Medicine at Emory University in the Division of Renal Medicine, Mr. Damian Marshall, who is a clinical therapist intern as well as a patient advocate, Mr. Jonathan Bufford, he is a patient advocate as well, and Senator Tanya Anderson. She represents Georgia's 43rd Senate District, and she serves as the chair of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus. We're also happy to have Raunina Uzil, who is a medical doctor, chief medical officer for MedCura Health. The conversation today that we've planned is to center around the issues concerning kidney disease. 33% of American adults are at risk for kidney disease. This is about 1 out of every 3 people. That's how serious this disease is. But more specifically, for Black Americans and people of color, we're at an even higher risk. The rate of severe kidney disease in the African American community, as well as in the Caribbean American community, is higher than any other subculture in the United States. Black Americans make up about 13% of the total population of the U.S., but 25% of all chronic kidney disease concerns and patients are African American or individuals from African or Caribbean descent. And this is what that looks like. 25%, that's a quarter of all of the chronic kidney disease and renal disease issues in the country stem from only 13% of the total population of the country. So we need to talk about this. This is critical. It is not just a disease that we live with, it is a disease that we die with. I want you to understand that African Americans are 4 to 5 times more likely to develop severe chronic kidney failure than Americans that are from European descent. And so because of these statistics, it is vitally important for us to have this conversation. There are unique challenges that face African Americans and people of color and minorities in general, like access to proper health care, health education, and health awareness, the ability to know symptoms and get them treated on time, access to proper dialysis machines and dialysis locations. All of these are severe concerns on top of affordable care, insurance concerns, Medicare and Medicaid concerns, hospitalization concerns, and the list goes on and on. So I pray that you will not opt out of this conversation. Stay right where you are. Do not move, because we need to talk about the issues that are deeply affecting our community. And healthcare and kidney disease is one of them. So to begin our conversation, shall we pray? And then we'll have our moderator take us through our discussion. Will you join me? Father, I thank you that you have given us the ability to discuss these important and significant issues that concern our health and our total well-being. That you're not just the God who cares about our soul, but you're also a God who cares about our bodies. That our bodies truly are your temple, And so I'm asking now that you will give us the ability to dive deep into these serious concerns and to hear your heart in the midst of them. We pray for every panelist and every presenter that's speaking today, that they will bring information that not only touches our head, but information that moves us and inspires our heart. Thank you for allowing us an opportunity to come together to have this discussion. Now would you be in the midst, touch those who are watching and listening for your glory. That is our desire. It is in the name of he who died on the cross for our sins. In Jesus' name, amen. And now turn this conversation over to our moderator, Minister Sabrina Botts, who will take us further into our discussion.
Thank you, Pastor. Well, good morning, family. It is my distinct privilege to be here today to moderate this very important community conversation on kidney disease. So today we have planned for you a robust and engaging educational event. We've gathered medical professionals, we have patients, we have patient activists, and we have community leaders, all because these conversations are so necessary for you, our audience, I almost said our studio audience. So what I want you to do, as Pastor said, is get ready to learn today. It is quite possible that today you're going to hear something that will literally change the rest of your life. But don't just take it in for yourself. I invite you right now to share this with your friends and your family. So for those of you who are joining us on social media, then right now you can share this to your news feed. I don't think you can go live anymore with Facebook, but please, please, please get the word out. For those who are not on social media, you can also watch us on our website. So newlife-atl.org. For those that you're going to be sharing this with, if you want to just put us on mute right now and call somebody, they can find us on both YouTube and on Facebook at New Life Decatur. What I want to emphasize is, as we're getting started, why this is important for you is if you or people that you love have risk factors like diabetes, hypertension, obesity, even certain kinds of medications, all of that makes you at risk for kidney disease. So this conversation really, really, really matters. I want to point out and invite you to get engaged throughout the day, throughout this program. If you're on our website, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, we have a chat feature. So please share your comments. On Facebook, we have a renal specialist that's there to answer your questions. So as questions come up throughout the day, please go to Facebook, put those in, and someone is there to answer those questions, as well as we'll be posting resources that'll be helpful for you that deal with some of the topics that'll be raised today. As Pastor mentioned, I'd like to reiterate our partners and our sponsors for this event today. I won't name those names right now, but I will add, which Pastor forgot to say, New Life Church. So we're grateful for the sponsorship from Pastor Harris and New Life Church, and also New Life Community Ministries. All right, so with that said, let's get started. We're gonna introduce to you our very first guest, Dr. Jason Cobb. Dr. Cobb is a kidney specialist here in the Atlanta area. He practices at Emory Hospital Midtown, or what we formerly knew as Crawford Long. Dr. Cobb was educated at Atlanta's own Morehouse College, and he did his medical training at Emory University. He's practiced for over 10 years, serving some of the most vulnerable populations in the Atlanta area. So ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Dr. Jason Cobb.
Good morning. I'm going to talk about something I'm very passionate about, kidney disease. Our nephrology fellows spend 2 years training, learning about kidney disease, and our medical students do a month in nephrology learning about kidney disease. I'm going to try to give the highlights in 20 minutes. Outline, we'll talk about defining chronic kidney disease, or CKD. These are my patients who are not on dialysis yet. Prevention and treatment of chronic kidney disease. End-stage renal disease, or ESRD. These are my patients who are on dialysis, and sometimes we might say end-stage kidney disease, or ESKD. And we'll also talk about kidney replacement therapy options such as dialysis. Prevalence of CKD. Chronic kidney disease affects more than 20 million Americans, about 13% of the US adult population. Over 600,000 people have end-stage renal disease or on dialysis. While African Americans account for 13% of the population in the United States, we have 50% higher risk of chronic kidney disease, 3.5 times the likelihood of progression from chronic kidney disease to end-stage renal disease needing dialysis, and account for 30% of patients who are on dialysis or with end-stage renal disease, but we only make up 13% of the US population. CKD, or chronic kidney disease in Georgia, is the 9th leading cause of death in Georgia. Georgia has higher end-stage renal disease or dialysis rates compared to the rest of the United States, and blacks have 4 times the rates of end-stage renal disease in Georgia compared to others. Eastern and southern parts of Georgia have the highest rates of end-stage renal disease. Diabetes prevalence in African Americans in Georgia, 12% versus only 8% in whites in Georgia. The most common cause of end-stage renal disease in the United States is diabetes. Over 50% of patients on dialysis are on dialysis because of diabetes. Hypertension is number 2. Number 3 is glomerulonephritis. That's 13%. Those are some of the special things that we see, such as focal segmental glomerulosclerosis, HIV-associated nephropathy, lupus nephritis. My passion for nephrology stems from my family. On one side, I have my aunt who passed away when I was in college with end-stage renal disease. She was a dialysis patient. One of my first cousins in her arms has severe chronic kidney disease right now. On the other side is my mom and 2 of her brothers in 2020. One brother is a dialysis patient in our hometown, and our other brother, my uncle, died from end-stage renal disease and acute kidney injury on chronic kidney disease in 2020. So we all have hypertension. Some in our family have diabetes, but there's possibly some other reason why we might have higher rates of end-stage renal disease or kidney disease in our family. There might be some genetic causes. So genetics of chronic kidney disease. About 1 in 5 people with 2 copies of something called ApoL1. This is a genetic risk factor that's been seen in patients of African descent. So African American patients, African Caribbean patients, patients in Africa. Patients with 2 risk alleles for ApoL1 have higher rates of kidney disease and higher rates of dialysis. So what do healthy kidneys do? They help balance body fluids by removing excess water and minerals. If you have kidney failure, it can cause fluid overload, which causes swelling. If it gets into the lungs, you can have difficulty breathing. It also can make your blood pressure higher. They clean the blood by removing waste and poisons, such as urea and acid in your blood. They can help control the production of red blood cells. As many people may not know, kidneys make EPO, which makes your bone marrow make red blood cells. So kidney patients have a lot more anemia compared to others. Help regulate blood pressure. So blood pressure or high blood pressure or hypertension can cause kidney disease, but it's the other way around too. If you have kidney disease, you can have higher blood pressure, because kidneys has a lot to do with regulation of blood pressure. Help regulate body minerals such as calcium and phosphorus. So bone disease, our kidney patients are a risk factor for fractures. What are symptoms of chronic kidney disease? We often say hypertension is a silent killer because oftentimes patients do not have symptoms from hypertension. It's the same thing with chronic kidney disease. We see so many times that people present to the hospital in end-stage renal disease or kidney failure, and this is the first time they've been notified by a doctor that they have kidney disease because they don't have any symptoms until it's too late. Most patients don't need dialysis until the kidney function is less than 15%. So you can live with 20%, 19% kidney function without having any real symptoms. So oftentimes, that's why prevention is so important, because if you wait till you have symptoms, oftentimes it's too late. But if you do have some symptoms, you can feel more tired and have less energy because of anemia, have trouble concentrating, a poor appetite, trouble sleeping, muscle cramps at night, swollen feet and ankles, puffiness around your eyes, have dry, itchy skin. Now, there are other reasons you can have dry, itchy skin, and all patients with dry, itchy skin do not have kidney disease, but because calcium and phosphorus builds up, it can lead to skin complications in our kidney patients. Need to urinate more often, especially at night. So patients will say oftentimes, how do I have kidney failure? I urinate more than I ever been in my life. Well, that's the problem. Because you have severe kidney disease, the kidneys cannot hold on to water when it's appropriate. So patients oftentimes will urinate more when they have severe chronic kidney disease. Test to check for kidney disease. We always look at the urine. The urine is very important. If you have protein in your urine, that's a bad sign. You're supposed to have protein in your blood. When your kidneys are damaged, you can have protein leaking into the urine. Other was a blood test. So the serum creatinine. So we all have muscle, and we all have different levels of muscle, but it's broken down into creatinine. And your kidneys are supposed to get rid of creatinine, but when your kidneys are not functioning properly, the creatinine in your blood builds up. We put this into a special equation, and that's how we can tell your percent kidney function, or your estimated GFR. So this tells how well your kidneys are filtering your blood. Then we have stages of kidney disease. So we put your kidney function into the equation. It can give me, I tell my patients, I can tell your kidney percent. So stage 1, greater than 90. Stage 2, 60 to 89. Stage 3, from 30 to 59. And sometimes we divide stage 3 into 3A and 3B. Stage 4, 15 to 29%. And less than 15% is stage 5. And that's when we often talk about dialysis, when people get to stage 5. So 2020 was a big year. The pandemic started, George Floyd, political issues in 2020. But one thing that came about, we started looking at medical decision tools in medicine. And a big article came out in the New York Times. And one thing that came up was creatinine and estimated GFR, how we determine the kidney function. So in this article, doctors look to these digital calculators to make treatment decisions, but they can end up denying Black patients access to certain specialists, drugs, and transplants. Because the estimated GFR equation gives one value for African American patients and gives another value for all non-African American patients, all other patients. So this led to this woke period in 2020 also filtered into medicine. So racism in medicine. I'm on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and we ended up tackling this at our local hospital. So your creatinine is 1.37. And notice this on blood work that you have for your local doctor. It gives 1%, and this patient had creatinine of 1.37, 64% if it's a non-African American patient, and 74% if it's an African American patient. So it's a 10% difference in kidney function with the same creatinine. This is very important. We use kidney function, the estimated GFR, the percent kidney function, to determine when you need to see a nephrologist, a kidney specialist like myself. Kidney transplant referrals. You cannot get referred until your kidney function is less than 20%. So the way this equation sets up, where it always gives African Americans a different kidney function compared to everybody else, it delays the African American patient from being referred to see a nephrologist and also being referred for things such as kidney transplant. So our hospital, as of June of 2021, we just removed this, and all our patients are being reported with the non-African American value. We have removed the separate value for African American patients in the Emory healthcare system. Prevention of kidney disease. Have regular checkups by your doctor. Take the prescribed medications for your diabetes and high blood pressure. All medications have side effects. There's 10 versions of each medication. Talk to your provider before you just stop the medication. We can maybe change the dosing of it. We can maybe change to another medication that have less side effects. Don't give up just because you have some side effects from your medications. Lose excess weight by following a healthy diet and regular exercise program. That is easier said than done, but there are places where you can have help and resources. With the pandemic, we all gained a little pandemic weight, but definitely you can work on losing excess weight. Smoking worsens kidney disease, so stop smoking if you're a smoker. Avoid using large amounts of over-the-counter pain medications, especially things such as Motrin, Advil, Aleve, Goody powders. They all decrease the blood flow to the kidneys and can be directly toxic to the kidneys. Tylenol is on the list. Tylenol has side effects. It's mostly liver side effects. It's one that we actually prefer in kidney patients, but even with Tylenol, you have to be careful and use in moderate amounts as the label prescribes. But all the rest of them are very bad on the kidneys. Limit your intake of alcoholic drinks. People talk about alcohol a lot in kidney disease. It's not directly toxic to the kidneys, but alcohol affects your diabetes. It affects the blood pressure, so it is harmful to your kidneys. Make changes in your diet, eating less salt, protein in your diet also if you have severe kidney disease. Risk factors for kidney disease: diabetes, high blood pressure, family history of kidney disease, African American race. All minorities have higher risk of kidney disease, but African Americans have the highest. Smoking, obesity, all risk factors for kidney disease. So what can we do to reduce the risk of kidney disease in African Americans? Education, programs like today is very important. Early detection of kidney disease. See your primary care doctor, have physicals, adequate access to health care, more clinical research in African Americans, better understanding of things such as APOL1, that gene I talked about earlier. We're in very early stages of learning what all this gene can do. Adequate treatment of diabetes, adequate treatment of hypertension, and proper dietary habits. High blood pressure or hypertension. Age puts you at risk of hypertension, but you can also be diagnosed with hypertension early. I see so many patients in their teens and 20s being diagnosed with high blood pressure. Race, minorities have increased risk of hypertension. Weight, alcohol use, all increase your risk of high blood pressure. Sodium, a mineral that's important for controlling blood pressure. It found in most processed foods, especially in salt. We recommend less than 2,000 milligrams of sodium per day. So how can you do that? Eating out less. When you go to the grocery store, looking at your labels to see the sodium content in your foods. Try using alternative food seasonings. Be careful with some. Some might replace sodium with potassium, and some of your dialysis patients especially have to be careful with potassium intake. But there are definitely alternatives, and talk to your physician about them. How to treat kidney disease, diet and fluid management, medications. So all medications are not the same when it comes to hypertension. Some medications such as ACE inhibitors like lisinopril or ARBs like valsartan have kidney protective effects. SGLT2 inhibitors, these are new diabetes medications as you see on these TV commercials, like Invokana and Farxiga. They have protective effects on the kidneys. If you go into renal failure, we have dialysis options such as peritoneal dialysis, which patients do at home, hemodialysis. But I always tell my patients, dialysis is not your final destination. Kidney transplant should be most patients' final goal. And also non-treatment. Sometimes you can go the palliative care route. Stage of the kidney disease, reviewing again, stage 5, when your kidney function is less than 15%, that's when we start considering things such as dialysis. And patients on dialysis, African Americans have 3.9 times the rates of whites, but all minorities have higher rates compared to whites, but African Americans have the highest rate. So end-stage renal disease, when do you need dialysis? When things such as malnutrition or acid level, electrolyte things such as potassium, we can't control in clinic anymore. Fluid overload, we give diuretics or water pills. If we can't control anymore, then we need to go towards dialysis. Preparation. All patients should see a kidney doctor such as myself when their kidney function is less than 30%. But there's other patients though that have other reasons to be seen earlier, but it's important to see your primary care doctor so they can make that determination. Kidney replacement therapy options or dialysis. Hemodialysis, this is when a patient goes in the clinic 3 times a week. They use a machine to take blood out of your access, and it goes through the dialysis machine. The dialysis machine does your filtering. Most patients do 3 to 4 hours, 3 times a week. But there's a home option too, where you can do home hemodialysis. Peritoneal dialysis doesn't involve the blood, it only involves fluid. This is one where you put fluid in the abdomen or the belly, and patients do this at home, and they do it every day. They get their blood cleaned every day with peritoneal dialysis. And the final destination should be kidney transplant. If you're a patient with severe kidney disease, when your kidney function gets less than 20%, you can get referred to a kidney transplant center. You do not have to wait to be on dialysis to get referred for a kidney transplant. And if you're a dialysis patient, even if your physician might think you have contraindications, they should at least refer you so you can have the opportunity to talk to the kidney transplant center yourself and see if there are other options that can be available for you. End-stage renal disease disparities, transplantation. Black patients are less likely to have identified the kidney transplant candidates, less likely to be referred for kidney transplant, less likely to be put on the kidney transplant waiting list, longer time on the waiting list, and less likely to receive a living donor. So this is very important that we get our African American patients sent to the kidney transplant centers as soon as possible. And also, end-stage renal disease, dialysis, chronic kidney disease has a financial impact on this country. Hemodialysis is definitely more expensive. Peritoneal dialysis at home is in the middle, but transplant is the least expensive. So more patients we can get transplanted, it'll be better for the economy also. Patient resources on kidney disease, this was a lot in 20 minutes, but other resources, you can go to nefcure.org, blackhealthmatters.com, AAKP, which is Association for Kidney Patients, and National Kidney Foundation, NKF, kidney.org. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Dr. Cobb, for such an informative presentation. I'd like to invite you to join us over here. We're going to have some conversation with both Dr. Cobb and our next guest. As we are preparing to transition to that, I want to invite you and our audience to put in the chat some things that stuck out to you from what Dr. Cobb shared. Dr. Cobb, you did an excellent job. Thank you so much for providing such great information, but making it where it was user-friendly, that people can take it in. And I wanted to just highlight a few things as we give the audience time to put some stuff in the chat. One thing that stuck out to me is, again, this emphasis, critical emphasis on the connection between renal disease or kidney disease, diabetes, and hypertension. I can imagine that out in that audience, and I'm speaking faith, that there are at least 1,000 of you. But most of us know someone who either has hypertension or diabetes. That means that either us, people in our households, or in our immediate family are at risk for kidney disease. That is incredible. That's a weighty knowing. The other thing that jumped out to me and that was intriguing is this connection between the gene and people's risk. And so hopefully we'll get a chance to speak about how do people get screened, because you're not necessarily born knowing about that or knowing what your risk factors are. So I'd love for us to maybe have some time in dialogue in a moment about how do people know if they actually have that gene. And then I would say the other thing that stuck out to me was that all minorities actually have risk for kidney disease. And so those of us that are minorities, we need to also have that knowing. And again, we are faith-based, and so we're not stoking fear, we're not promoting fear, but knowledge is power, because those things that we don't know often can hurt us. People say what you don't know can hurt you. That is a lie from the pit of hell. So we know that particularly in things of our health, that what we don't know can be detrimental, catastrophic for us. So that's another reason that we're gathered here today with trusted people who can give us the right information for our community. So if there's something that stuck out to you that you didn't know before that you thought was very important, then I invite you right now to put it in the chat and begin to interact with each other. All right. Well, now we're going to transition to a time of conversation. We're going to spend about 15 minutes dialoguing with our two physicians, and I'm going to introduce to you the next guest on our panel, Dr. Rolnina Uzzle. Dr. Uzzle is the Chief Medical Officer for MedCura Health, which is a community health center here in the Atlanta area. Now, those of you that are from Atlanta, I know right now you're saying, who? Well, MedCura Health is formerly Oakhurst Medical Center. So I know that those of you that are particularly from Metro Atlanta, you know Oakhurst. Oakhurst has been a staple in our community. I can say from my own personal life, from my childhood, I even took my children to Oakhurst Medical Clinics when they were coming up. And just a wonderful part of the landscape in the Metro Atlanta area, particularly in minority communities, to provide us quality access to primary care and some specialty care. So thank you for what you lead others in doing there at Oakhurst Medical Center, MedCura. And Dr. Uzzle is also still seeing patients. She is a family medicine doctor, a specialty that's near and dear to my heart. And I like to say that she's on the front lines. She is a critical person in our care, primary care. They're there on the front lines, keeping us healthy. And one of the things I also like to say is they treat us from the womb to the tomb. So she is a champion. She was trained at the University of South Florida. She did her residency at Baptist Medical Center in Birmingham and also at Atlanta Medical Center. She's been at MedCura since about 2000, and Dr. Uzzle not only treats but also leads other clinicians in their fight to care for some of Atlanta's most vulnerable populations. So if you guys were in the building, I'd ask you to give a hand, so put in the chat a great thank you and welcome to Dr. Uzzle. Well, Dr. Uzzle, as I bring you into the conversation, since you are a primary care provider, prevention, as I know I was trained as a PA, that primary care is all about prevention. And so I want to bring you into this conversation about kidney disease to talk about what we need to be focused on in a space of prevention. And now I know we had a conversation the other day, and we talked about some of those painful things that you get to share with your patients when it comes to us taking care of ourselves and doing what we need to do. We're all family. I started this conversation that way. So tell us the truth. What do we need to be doing? So welcome.
Great. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Potts. One of the things that we primarily concentrate on is prevention. And Dr. Cobb, that was a great presentation. You did highlight a number of topics that we engage with our patients. And what I'd like to focus on are modifiable factors. Things that we can do as individuals in the decisions that we make for our own health. Things that are not modifiable, such as our race, we can't control. Genetics, we may not be able to control, but there are decisions that we can make that are modifiable factors in preventing chronic kidney disease. And I'd like to start with access to care. Dr. Cobb brought that up as one of the problems that we face, particularly as minorities. Our center is a community health center, as Ms. Bott said, and there are several community health centers in this area. And you can receive quality, affordable, culturally sensitive care for as little as $30. And, you know, the truth is, and the reality is, I think most of us can invest $30 in our own health care per year. We spend much more on other things that don't affect our health. But regarding the modifiable risk factors, number one would be our choices in the foods that we eat and how that affects our body mass index or weight. Now, Dr. Cobb brought out that depending on your race, there is a different calculation for your kidney function. For body mass index, we do take into account other factors as well. But very simply, body mass index, taking your height and weight, some of the other factors that we look at are athletic build, et cetera. If you could do one thing in terms of prevention is keeping your body mass index in that normal range, which is somewhere between 18.9 and 24.9. Greater than 95% of us, particularly in minority communities, are either overweight or obese. And once you're outside of that range, now that sets you up for having health issues such as diabetes and hypertension, which Dr. Cobb explained as one of the, or two of the two risk factors for chronic kidney disease, with diabetes being number one. Also, diet and exercise. And diet, again, making that very specific for the patient as a preventive care specialist, and that you have to have the conversation with patients of their diet and what their resources are for their diets. We see the commercials for McDonald's, and pay attention, and there is a commercial now that we have for McDonald's in which the young African-American female as a child orders a hamburger, and it takes you through her life as she comes to McDonald's and starts ordering more and more food throughout her life, and it ends with the mother now ordering chicken McNuggets for the children. So again, those foods are more affordable. However, there may be more affordable options. DeKalb County is now offering mobile food trucks in which there are affordable choices for food. Exercise. Exercise is another area in which is a modifiable factor, and you don't need a gym membership. You can do fun things with your kids, with your grandkids. The key is that you move. Most of us have smartphones in which it can count our steps. Our goal standard is 10,000 steps per day, but most of us can't quite do that. But anything, you know, if you park a little further from a building in a safe environment and walk to that building, or taking the stairs when you can, but talking with your primary health care provider is very important in customizing what is a great exercise plan for you. Again, decreasing your chances of getting diabetes or hypertension. Normal blood pressure is 120/80 or less. However, if you have other comorbid conditions, those numbers are looked at a little differently. And also regarding medications, as Dr. Cobb said, staying away from some of the over-the-counter medications, limiting your alcohol, and stopping smoking. So we as primary care providers, we're looking at prevention. And now that everyone knows that you can have affordable health care, access shouldn't be a problem. If you can invest seeing a primary care provider once a year, that would be most important.
Thank you. I thought of a few questions. Many things came up while you were talking. When we begin to talk about food, we know that for many people of color, food is culture. And I have, during the time that I was in the clinic, one of the things that I would see is this struggle that people would have trying to be different. We know that chronic diseases changes our lives and our outlook. And anything that happens to you in a family unit is going to change the family system. But I've seen people really struggle, particularly around the holidays, because food is culture. For many of us, food is family. So if I change, everybody has to change. And I saw, sadly, many of my patients almost having peer pressure or being bullied to not try to be healthy because now you think you're better than the rest of us, you know, or oh, a little bit of this is not gonna hurt. So either one of you, have you seen that with your patients, and how have you helped them to address, because it does matter. I only see grandma, you know, at Christmas, and I really want this macaroni and cheese because nobody does it the way she does it, so.
Well, I think you bring up some good points, and that's why customizing a plan for each patient, knowing what their environmental resources are. And, you know, we all have days in which we cheat. And particularly with holidays, we recognize as primary care providers that those are going to be difficult days. So out of the 365 days, if we can do okay 3 to 4 days out of 7, and you reserve the weekends for when you can go outside the boundaries, I think we could reach a balance, because most people are not around their families 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. Therefore, when you're not under the influence of those things, you definitely can make some choices that are better for you as an individual.
I think I'm changing my medical home. You taking some new patients? Now, Dr. Cobb, I know that, you know, the clients that you're dealing with, the patients that you're dealing with have been diagnosed with kidney disease, and so everything is changing. One of the things that matters to me a lot is the impact of disease distress. And that's something that goes on talked about in our community. It centers around mental health. It's a grind, it's a bid to be diagnosed with anything. And Jonathan and I were talking about this earlier, to be told that you have to take a pill. So it's one thing if I want to take a pill, but it's something else if I now have to take a pill. Even that knowing weighs heavily on you, and people sort of struggle. So Dr. Cobb, one of the questions I'd like to ask you, I can imagine many of your patients are grieving, not to mention what their family members are going through. So how have you helped them to make that transition and be able to own their health? Because it takes a lot of motivation to do now all these things they've got to do because they are now a dialysis patient or because they are now a kidney patient.
So patient dedication is very important. In the chronic kidney disease patients who are not yet on dialysis, especially when they first get the diagnosis, a lot of patients are in shock. Seeing me in the clinic more often, sometimes we have resources. We can send patients to patient advocates. We can send patients to social workers, even therapists at times. And sometimes there are even medications that we might be able to use. But a lot of times we can get away with stress reduction, exercise programs, just educating the patient about their disease process. Some patients take this as like their second job, and they really get motivated. And I think that really helps with some of the shock and the grief that they have at the very beginning. Starting dialysis is a whole nother issue. That's a big change in lifestyle and a big thing for patients they have to go through. Luckily, dialysis units have social workers available. We have dietitians available. We have nurses and staff who are in the clinic all the time. Patients also have groups where they can talk to other patients. A lot of the patients actually get to know each other and become very close to the patients who sit beside them in the dialysis unit. So there's some of the things that we have more resources possibly available in the dialysis unit. But it definitely a bit process, is a bit lifestyle change. Just make sure they have a good relationship with their physician. Do not keep this to themselves. Bring it up to their physician, because we definitely know that depression, psychological, other disorders are very big in our kidney disease patients.
Thank you. Many things you said actually resonated with me. My children's grandmother was a dialysis patient for 20 years. And then she finally passed away a few years ago, but she actually used to call dialysis her job. That's what she would say. She's going to work. Dr. Uzzle, I wanted to circle back with you in terms of many things that Dr. Cobb mentioned in working together with your primary care practitioner. I really like that idea because as a frontline clinician, you do need to work closely together. But thinking about things like dietitians, exercise programs, with you in primary care, have you been able to, I've heard of some doctors writing prescriptions for certain kinds of foods, write a prescription. Some farmers markets have those kind of programs with clinics where a doctor can write, she needs to have 7 servings of this per day or this, but also exercise. So there at MedCure, you as a frontline clinician, are there resources in our community that you know about? Now, you're here in South DeKalb. We're here in South DeKalb for those that are joining us from outside of Atlanta. We're in a heavily African-American area here in 3003435. Many people here are at or below the poverty line. Many of our families are what we call the working poor, and they are accessing your clinic because I send them there. So what things are in our community, or what kinds of tips do you have for people to look out locally to be able to find resources? I know you mentioned the farmers market. Anything else?
Right. The DeKalb County sponsored mobile food trucks. Also, if you can access for the American Diabetes Association, they do have support services there and helping individuals understand the diet that they need to be on, because that's again where you have to customize for the patient and see what their individual resources are. I also want to add that we as primary care providers, we ourselves have to be accountable, because if we're not healthy, then you're trying to tell your patients to be healthy, and there's a disconnect there. So as a part of our practice, we try to use words like we, I understand, because, etc. And, I'll say, well, I'm as busy as anyone else can be, and I could at least squeeze in 2 to 3 days of some other activity. Is that possible for you? We have to acknowledge, again, people's resources, where they live. You often have to say, what type of environment? Do you feel safe outside?
Yes.
I often have patients come up here to the mall and walk in the mall, not only for the temperature control, but the safety control. So to answer your question, we do have a few, but I would encourage the audience to go online, use their smartphones. We use our smartphones for everything else. Google, resources near me, specific resources near me, and that would be helpful. We ourselves, we're trying to expand our reach and collaborating with individuals who can help. But again, the customization is very important.
I really appreciate that. One of the things that I always like to encourage my patients, and even the clients that we get that come through New Life Community Ministries, is this whole idea of owning your own life, or what we call now patient activation. But ultimately, patients don't live in our exam rooms. They live in communities where they live, work, play, and pray. And so one of the things that, this program is a good example of community coming together, because all of us play a role in a patient's life. And so us as a faith-based organization, you as a health partner down the street, the mall, and many things that are up and coming. So I also encourage patients to reach out, to begin to Google and to search for things that are in your area, because at the end of the day, it's your life, it's your health, and it does need to be done in a way that works for you. I used to say to my patients all the time, if I write this prescription for you and you don't take it, it's not working for you. It can't work for you if it's not working for you. So the onus is on you to let me know that this medicine makes you sick, this medicine, you can't go to the bathroom all day long because of the shift you work, you need something else. So you want to be able to open your mouth and speak to your clinicians about what's happening with you. They're members of your care team. They're in it to win it with you. But ultimately, you've got to walk it out, and they won't know if you don't open your mouth and tell them. So I do invite you to do that. I hope that you get to have doctors like Dr. Uzzle and Dr. Cobb. Actually, I don't ever want you to have to meet Dr. Cobb. Like, we're great that he's a great, great doctor, but I really hope that you never have to meet him. But you want to have physicians and clinicians that you really connect with and that really care. And I can tell that both of you do. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Before I allow you to go, so don't get up, what I'd like to do now is transition to bring into the conversation two young men who have so graciously agreed to be a part of our panel today. Both of them are actually walking the road of kidney disease, and they have so graciously agreed to tell us a little bit of their stories today. We thought it would just be helpful for you to hear how they got here and just what it's like being them. And they're experts now on what it means to be managing their lives with kidney disease, hopeful, and living their best lives now. So if you would allow me to introduce to you Mr. Jonathan Bufford. Jonathan is from upstate New York. He moved to the Atlanta area back in the 1990s. He is a kidney patient, and he's going to tell you a little bit about his story, but we're grateful to welcome him. And then we have Mr. Damian D.B. Marshall. Damian is actually, I'm more excited about this. He's now a doctoral student in social work. Damian has always been a health and wellness guru and advocate. And now he's allowed the things that's happened in his life. As he says, he's turned these troubles into triumphs, and he spends his time being a patient advocate and helping to motivate and encourage others on their path to wellness. So thank you both for being here. Jonathan, why don't we start with you and just spend it? We got about 15 minutes, so take about 5 minutes or so and tell the audience your story.
Sure. Well, my journey began, I would say, as a dialysis patient. It began last May. Mm-hmm. And I basically went to the hospital because my left foot had swollen up. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't sure why it had swollen up. So I went up to the St. Joseph's Hospital. And it was there that I discovered that I had a lower extremity kidney failure. Mm. Dr. Cobb had called for me to begin the process to begin on dialysis. Mm-hmm. I can tell you it definitely changed a lot of things in my life, and it was tough on my family at first, on my wife, on my children, and a lot of that came from high blood pressure. Mm. I haven't seen Dr. Cobb for a few years, and but there were times where I was neglecting myself because being a black man, you're like, oh, well, I don't need these pills. I don't really need them. I'm okay. Mm-hmm. But I tell you, and I want to tell people out there, don't take it for granted. Mm-hmm. It just, my life changed like that. Mm-hmm. I think like growing up, we don't really hear a lot about this. We're not really told a lot in our neighborhoods. We have so many liquor stores on the corners. We got all these corner stores, or back home we call them bodegas. And they sell things that are bad for your body. Mm. When you look at a lot of these rappers that are passing away, or older actors or popular people, I'm quite sure some of it is from kidney disease and kidney failure. Because we're not told these things, in schools. Like, being from Syracuse, New York, no one told me anything about kidney failure. I didn't know anything about when I see the guy walking around the neighborhood with his feet swollen. We call him like the elephant guy or the elephant woman. Mm-hmm. We didn't understand that. We did not. And so, like, when you get this diagnosis, you really start to understand what it all came from. And how you got there, and you start to think back like, man, wow, what if I didn't eat all those bananas, or what if I didn't eat all those tomatoes, or what if I didn't drink all these Cokes and all this, it starts to really play with you. But through the Emory dialysis that I've been getting treatment with Dr. Cobb and his staff, I've been learning how to eat different, get more exercise, watch my fluid intake. It's been definitely a journey for me, and I continue my journey. So I tell y'all out there, don't take it for granted. Exercise daily. Watch what you eat. Read everything. Read everything. Potassium levels in foods. If you read something it has like 230 potassium, then the next thing if you have that, then that's your potassium for the day. You don't need no more potassium. Then you can have something else that's less potassium. So I mean, it's been a journey, man. Yeah.
Thank you.
Can you tell the audience a little more about your dialysis process, what you go through during the week?
Sure. So 3 times a week, I have treatments. It's Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I go in around 3 o'clock, get put onto the chair. They have to, can I show them my access? So, I don't know if the camera can see this. This is the access on my arm here. This is what you get right here when you get on dialysis. And they have to put needles in your arm, hook you up to the machine, which takes out all the toxins that's in your blood, clears your blood for that day, and then a day after the next day you come back. Because as we eat, we still got to eat, right? So we eat, we drink, and from those foods, it's those things that your kidneys can't break down on their own no more. This is the reason why dialysis was created, so that way it can give a person a chance at life, and to continue life. It's a process. It's definitely a process. And when you first start it, yes, it does mess with your head because you can fall into a little depression. I know I did in the very beginning. I could talk to my mother a lot. I cried a lot because, I knew that my body was going through something different that I had never went through before. And I was a young guy. I was very athletic, and like when you eat, like I know some of y'all go out for work and you eat and you lay down. Be careful with that. Because when you eat and lay down, remember your body's not moving no more. You're just laying down, so that food, that beef is just sitting on your stomach. All that phosphated food and sugar just sitting on you. Those Coca-Colas are bad for you. I hope y'all are listening to what we're talking about because this is serious. Especially in the Black community, we gotta wake up and understand that this is critical. And that this educational program that you're watching right here with all these fantastic people, this is something that you need, and we need to have a discussion around the dinner table with this.
Thank you, Jonathan. That reminded me something you and I talked about a little bit earlier. When did you how long ago have you known that you had high blood pressure, hypertension? And did you know that other people in your family had hypertension, had diabetes, or had to be on dialysis previously?
I knew that my uncle, my father's brother, was on dialysis. And my mother, she had hypertension and kidney diseases since she was a little girl. And it's in my family. Dr. Kyle talked about it before. And I knew I had high blood pressure because I was diagnosed a few years ago, probably like 2015, 2014, with high blood pressure. And I started seeing Dr. Cobb not too long afterwards. And, like I said, like being a Black man, just looking at those pills, and I'm like, I don't need those pills, I'll be okay. I just eat this, eat that. No.
Yeah.
And that really hurt me. I really hurt myself because I was being thick-headed,
How is your hypertension diagnosed? Like, were you having some symptoms? Had you just gone and had a checkup and they said, hey, your blood pressure is high? How did you know?
Well, I knew something was wrong because I was having like these headaches, a lot of headaches, or you can taste like a certain taste in your mouth, like a blood taste in your mouth. and like I had never had that before. And it comes from years of eating the wrong things, man, and drinking the wrong things. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
It's a buildup. You know what I mean? And so when I went to see my doctor, and he told me, he said, you have hypertension. And I never knew I had hypertension, because even though I had gained weight over the years, I was still kind of like athletic. I could move quick, I could work. But when I was at my job at Target and I was putting the carts in, one day I just felt like I had no energy, like nothing. Like I couldn't do anything. And I couldn't explain it. I didn't know what was going on. And come to find out, that's what it was. The kidney failure, when you have that, you have no energy. Like, you can't hardly even walk. Like, your legs feel funny, and it's not till you start getting the treatments that you feel stronger, because it's taking all that toxins out of your blood, all the things that's making you feel like you can't get up, you can't walk. Like, when I got my first treatment, I could tell you, like, I felt I was like a teenager. I told Dr. Cobb, I said, I feel like I'm 16.
Yeah.
Like I can almost run,
Yeah.
and because that's what your body needs.
Yeah.
It
Gotcha.
needed that. The kidney need that help, because as a person, we damage it ourselves.
Yeah.
We do it ourselves because we just want to grab something quick out the freezer, out the freezer, put it in the microwave, heat it up. We're not even reading what's in there.
Yeah.
The sodium could be like 1900. You know what I'm saying? And even if you don't have no phosphate in it, well, guess what? That 1900 damages your kidneys because it's sodium. And sodium could be all over that food. It could be anywhere in there. It could be from the cheese, from even some of the vegetables they put in there. It's supposed to be good for you, but it's not.
Yeah, and sodium is salt. Salt
Oh,
is
my
everywhere.
God.
So thank you, Jonathan.
Yes,
I
absolutely.
appreciate it. I want to bring DV into the conversation and share with the audience your story.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. Thank you for inviting me. Listening to Jonathan, I started getting emotional because my story is similar yet different. At this particular time in my life, I was attending VCU, Virginia Commonwealth University, pursuing my doctorate program in public policy and administration, wanted to change the world. And I ain't gonna say all my life, most of my life, I've been into wellness, just fitness. And so I was on my way to the gym. I worked out 5 days a week. At this particular time, I wanted to become an amateur bodybuilder. So I had 2 trainers, I had a dietitian, I had a nutritionist. So I was
You were serious.
Yeah, I was doing all the right things, right? And so I'm on my way to the gym Sunday morning, 7 a.m. I don't like to share my gym equipment, so I'm always the first one there so I can be selfish. And so with that said, I just passed out. I just passed out on the concrete sidewalk on campus. And when I passed out, I was more embarrassed just thinking if someone saw me, right? I wasn't even concerned what caused me to pass out. And so what do? I go to the gym and I work out. I mean, that's what we do, right? Yeah. But eventually after that, I went to the emergency room. And at that particular time, they just said, hey, you in this program, you stressed out. And I was like, oh, okay. So I would go out to class. I was starting having, I'm going to call it confusion. So I couldn't necessarily get my thoughts together. So I had a law class. And I was just really struggling. I went back to the emergency room because I'm very in tune with my body. My body's not feeling right. They say, hey, we can't find anything. I went to the emergency room a total of 3 times. They would send me back home. And so the changing factor for me is when I got a C on my final exam in this law class. I just couldn't process and connect the dots when it came to this particular class. I'm like, no, something is going wrong. So I'm an individual that always like to get second, third, and fourth opinions. So I went to
Thank
VCU Medical Hospital and I saw a doctor there. And it was like, oh, something is going on with your creatinine. I'm like, oh, the creatine that I'm taking? So there's a creatine supplement that some trainers use. And she was like, no, that's not that. Your body produces creatine. And so at that point, she ordered blood work. It was high. She sent me to have a ultrasound done of my kidneys. And I never really got the results from that. But from that, I know she sent me to a nephrologist. At that particular time, I called my family and say, hey, something going on with my kidneys. There's a possibility that I have kidney disease. letting everybody know what we're going to do about it. And so at the time I had a spouse. And so my spouse was like, oh, no, you coming home. I'm like, no, I'm going to stay here. I'm on a scholarship. They paying for my college. I got no money. I'm going to stay here and ride it out. At that particular time, the consensus was you never let us help you. You've always helped the family. This is the opportunity that the family can help and support you. So I came back to Atlanta from Virginia, and I didn't have any health insurance. I was a student. And so I ended up at Grady. And when I got to Grady, and Dr. Cobb just so happened to be there. He was my doctor. And so Dr. Cobb said, listen, we're going to go ahead and we are going to do a biopsy. And I was like, okay, biopsy. So I went and I had the surgery. Mom came and all that. I have a very supportive family. And so after the biopsy, of course, I had to come back in for the results. And I can remember Dr. Cobb telling me that I had FSGS. And in my mind, I just lost it.
And tell us what FSGS means.
FSGS. So I don't know how to pronounce the term. But Dr. Cobb, do you want to pronounce it?
Focal segmental glomerulosclerosis.
Okay, but I can describe it though.
Yes,
so basically
thank you.
what that is, you get these scar tissue buildup in your filters. And so your, and correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Cobb, but the blood doesn't filter appropriately. And so it causes the creatinine to increase, correct?
Plus, you spill a lot of protein in your urine.
Right. So that was my diagnosis, and I just wasn't happy. So you saw the symptoms, right? I wasn't obese.
Yeah.
I didn't have high blood pressure. I worked out. I ate well. I juiced. And so at that particular time, I was just angry. I was angry at God. I felt like I was cursed. Here it is in my head. Sorry, I'm getting emotional.
It's okay.
But I'm poor. Like I come, and some people say poor. No, we were poor. Like there was no OR where I come from. And with that said is I fought for me. I fought for my family. I bought us out of the projects. I'm providing a new life. I'm progressing. I'm becoming educated. I'm doing what the world and my family and even me, what I expect of me. Then here it is. I have to deal with this. What did I do to deserve this? And so I went through just emotional turmoil, just being upset with me, being upset with Dr. Cobb for telling me. I remember having a few choice words with him. Because when you go to Grady, you have to sit in the waiting area when you don't have any insurance, a little bit longer if you have private insurance. And so once I kind of dealt with that, Dr. Cobb put me on prednisone, and the prednisone was 60 milligrams, and that drove me crazy. Like literally, I was manic. Like I think I was getting 2 to 3 hours of sleep. I had to call, and eventually he prescribed Ambien so I can kind of get some rest because I had to find a job. And when I found the job, my job was an hour and a half away. So I was driving 1 hour and a half to work and back from work because I needed health insurance to help me fight this thing that I didn't know anything about. And so for the most part, that was my story. But I think the turning point for me is when at the time my spouse wasn't supportive. So when I was on the prednisone and I was having these moments, I was literally getting up 3 o'clock in the morning, cutting my grass. I love working in the yard. And so I was cutting my grass, planting flowers, digging up weeds.
Oh, wow.
And I know my neighbor was like, what is wrong with that black boy over there? But that's what I did. I had to do something to give me a peace of mind, and working in the yard did that.
Yeah.
And so at that particular time, my spouse did not believe that I was experiencing the symptoms that I was experiencing. So they went back to feeling alone and loneliness. And my family didn't know anything about it. Yeah,
Right.
I told them I had kidney disease, but they had no clue on where to go, what to say, or how to respond. So at that point, I went in self-preservation mode, and I had to become my own advocate.
I would like to point out that once you had your biopsy,
Yeah.
then it was discovered that you actually was a carrier of the gene, which was behind your kidney disease. Is that
Yeah.
correct? Yes. So no risk factors. Wouldn't have seen it coming.
No.
I was going to say, did anyone in your family have kidney disease? Had you know if anyone with problems with
Yeah.
their kidneys?
My immediate family, no, but I had my mom's cousin, which makes my second cousin, Mary. She had kidney disease. I remember seeing her as a little boy. I had been 9, 10 years old. I remember her stomach being swollen, and I would hear people say that she had kidney disease. But as a child, it never registered
Yeah, what
what
does that
that
mean?
was.
Yeah, what
I
does that
mean,
mean?
in my family, we just always kind of treated people like people. And so just because you were different, we never made a big hoopla about it. But so nobody never sat down and explained that to me. But I will say this, when we talked about the cultural dynamic in our families, there were times I was vegetarian, there was times I was pescatarian, but I would call my grandmother when she was living, and I said, Grandma, we coming down for Thanksgiving, I'm vegetarian, or I can't eat this. And she would make my own Thanksgiving meals. So I had my own little, the card tables that
you
we
were
play cards.
spoiled,
Well, yeah, that too.
yes.
So Grandma would make my own food on this end,
What?
and everybody would have their spread on that end.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome and rare.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And before we close out this segment, how are you doing today with your treatment?
So I was diagnosed with stage 3A, and so right now I'm 3B. Everything in my life has been stable. Again, I'm into wellness. I am into fitness, and so today I'm doing extremely well, which encourage me and to empower me to just help others because I'm doing so well, right? So I share what I do. I share my fitness program. I share my eating regimens. I have 6 mentees that I mentor through AAKP. Emory has a mentorship program that I partner with too. And so I just make sure I be a part of that community to make sure that I'm doing my best to just spread the wealth. And in addition to that, I went ahead and just wrote a book, Love's Pursuit, Journey to Wellness, to help people deal with negative thoughts that we deal with in the Black community, to deal with this kidney disease, to deal with just the chronic illnesses.
Other
Because
things.
I appreciate what the doctors are saying about the physical, but I tell people until you change your mind, your
Sir.
body and your actions and your behaviors, it's just not going to come to manifest. You have to change your mind. Your mind then have an emotional reaction to what you're thinking, your feelings, and then you're able to respond and determine how you're going to behave, how you're going to act. So it starts here.
Yeah. Well, for the audience, I know you all want to get to know DB better. So tell them how to find you on social.
Yeah, awesome. So DB Marshall on social media, either Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. My website, lovespursueatl.net. You can find me there. Again, you can find books, you can find resources. I'm an AAKP advocate. So if you need me to come just speak to your community, speak to your church, just anywhere that you need me, just hit me up, call me. I'm very passionate about this. We have to change this dynamic.
Yeah, we definitely do. We're I don't know if I can't remember if Pastor mentioned that this program is a launch of a year-long kidney disease program that we're involved in here at New Life. And so throughout the course of the year, we're going to have more information with doctors. We're going to have some screenings here in the community. We're also going to have conversations and opportunities for you all to interact with patients. And so I don't want you to be sad now that this is over, because this is really just the beginning. So as we get ready to wrap up this section, we're going to soon welcome 2 more guests to close out our day. But before we allow you guys to go, I want you to just take 10 seconds and leave our audience with a next step, an action point. What is your call to action that if they never see you again, Dr. Cobb, will start with you and then we'll go around this way and finish with Dr. Uzzle. What do you want them to know that will stave off kidney disease or help them to do something different?
Get screened. See your doctor, do a physical exam, get your blood work, get your urine checked, because you need to know. And also encourage your family member and friends to get screened also.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Jonathan?
I would say read everything. Continue exercising. If you're exercising, continue to exercise, read everything, and try to live the best life you possibly can so you don't have to see Dr. Cobb.
No, Dr. Cobb.
Yeah, I promise Dr. Cobb is a good man. But my call to action takeaway, and the doctor's probably not going to agree with this and may be a little upset when I say this, but request a renal panel. Yes, doctors do screenings. They do these things to identify indicators. But first of all, you need to go ahead and get your physical, because African Americans, black folks, just don't go to the doctor once a year. So trying to get you to go to the doctor once a year is a big, tall order. But get your annual physical and ask for a renal panel, because it's just more detailed, and they give you a little bit more information that the doctors can see. And just understand that you need to know that there are coping interventions and modalities to help you live and thrive with kidney disease.
Thank you. Dr. Uzzle?
Just 3 points. Access to care, given that we have community health centers, MedCura, we have Southside Medical, we have Family Health Centers of Georgia. There should be no reason that individuals can't make an appointment for screenings. If they don't have opportunity for a physical, but just go in for, hey, I'd like to be screened for my blood pressure. And through that screening and family history, et cetera, you will get the preliminary information. Number 2, the modifiable risk factors that I mentioned before. If at all you could try your life to stay in a normal body mass index, do that, in addition to having a visit with a primary care provider once a year. And 3, make sure that you do have a medical home. It pained me to hear you go to an emergency room 3 times.
Yes.
When maybe if you knew about community health centers, which are there in Virginia, DC, et cetera, just a $30 visit could have given you information much earlier. But I do applaud both of you in sharing your story with the public.
All right, thank you. So to our audience out there, help me say thank you to our wonderful panelists. You can put it in the chat since you're not in the building to go crazy right now. So thank you, everyone. As we are going to transition now to our next 2 guests, we're going to have a to close out our program, a different kind of discussion. One of the things that I want to bring up to you is to emphasize what Dr. Uzzle said, is making sure you have access to care. For those of you that are outside of the Atlanta area, then you can also Google community health centers in your area to find those federally qualified. They're funded through the government to provide access to care to people who are low income, and they have what we call a sliding fee, so you're able to pay according to your income in order for you to have a primary care home. It's very, 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 very important. All right, thank you. So as we get ready to close out our discussion for today, I'd like for us to transition to what we're calling a policy discussion. Now, some of you would say, now, what does policy have to do with this whole issue of kidney disease and health? When we get finished, I am sure you're going to know. I want to think I lost my notes. So what I'm going to do now is who we are welcoming. I'd like to introduce you to 2 leaders in our community landscape. Both of them have been active in the legislative and the political arena, and both of them are also leading in organizations right now. We have, to my left, Senator Tanya Anderson, who represents Georgia's 43rd Senate District, and she serves as the chairman of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus. We also have joining with us Mr. Howard Mosby, and Howard serves as a board member and treasurer of one of our sponsors today, that's the HEAL Collaborative. He also served as an 8-term member of the Georgia House of Representatives in District 83, going way back before I was born in 2002. So his legislative initiatives, and I think this is very important, and it sort of helps me to understand better the heart of Howard as I've gotten to know him. Most of his legislative activity was to increase access to health care by the underserved and the uninsured populations of Georgia, and he still very much works in that space today. So audience, please help me welcome our next 2 guests.
And I'd like to add
Yes.
for Howard Mosby that many of your audience, they don't know, his father was very instrumental in establishing Oakhurst Medical Centers as a founding board member? Founding board member. And then Howard took on the torch and was with us for several years, almost 8 years, and brought us through the thick and thin of of growth. And I believe when he was a board member, we had 2 centers, and now we have 6 locations.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So he's been well entrenched in this effort.
Yeah, he's a giant in this fight, and we appreciate him. So why don't we get this conversation started? And I want to go back to what I said to the audience. Why policy? Why does policy matter in this discussion about kidney disease? And we'll start with you, Senator. I almost call you Dr. Anderson. So.
So policy matters because one of the things that I know now as a lawmaker is that our world is built around a system. And systems and inequities in those systems happen in so many arenas, and one is healthcare. Unfortunately, it impacts the African American community by far more than any other community, as we've already heard this morning. But when there is a lack of access to fresh produce and fruit, we call those food deserts.
Yes.
When there is a lack of engagement from our policymakers concerning our healthcare communities, then our communities, Black communities, suffer the most because of those inequities. And what we see at the end of the day is that we're disproportionately impacted more ways than others. And the pandemic is one of those platforms so far that has exposed it.
Yes.
In addition to a lot of the things that Dr. Cobb mentioned, policy is centered around everything. And so if we're not at the table having those conversations on behalf of our communities, then they don't happen. So policy matters at this point.
And I know that Howard wants to get in. Now, Howard, you lead a community organization, not to mention your other 15 jobs. So from your perspective as a leader in this field, from a generation of leaders in this field, why does policy matters?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank New Life for doing this. Senator Anderson, longtime friend and just a stalwart in this community. Dr. Cobb, the work that you've done at Grady and Emory is outstanding. And then Dr. Uzzle, I can't say enough about her. With Oakhurst and now Mayor Cura and the work that she's done, she showed out early in her career, and we said, this is the person that we want to be our medical director. But let me just say this about policy and why we do what we do. We worked with NEFCure, one of the other sponsors here, to look at chronic kidney disease as a important issue that we need to address in our community. Nobody really, at least, and I'm just saying this from my perspective, is talking a lot about kidney disease and the effect that it is having in our community. But if you just drive down the street, you see the dialysis centers, you see, I don't want to talk about brands of fast food that's out there,
right.
And then you see the lack of investment in the community and what the community has access to, and then you see the numbers around what's happening with kidney disease in this space. You can easily see that why that there is a deficit, a health equity gap. And we started this organization really to address that. And one of the reasons why policy is a big issue here is that even if we do all the things that we need to do to address these issues, we come up with the new innovative therapies and we deal with that. If payers don't put these drugs or these therapies on the formularies where people can have access to them, it is almost all for naught. And so we need policy to be at the table when we discuss and when we're trying to address these issues and closing the health equity gap. And we can't do that without policy. And my good friend Calvin Smyrie, Representative Calvin Smyrie, says, the only people in America that set public policy are elected officials. And we have to make sure that we engage our elected officials.
One of the things that, as we had a pre-discussion, one of the things that always sticks out to me, and I spent about a decade working at Morehouse School of Medicine, which really helped to hone my public health lens. But one of the things that I was empowered with leaving Morehouse School of Medicine is the power of advocacy. And so I'd like for you, and Howard, you just hit on that. I'd like for you to talk to our audience a little bit about how they, in everyday Joe Blow, can affect public policy in terms of advocacy. I always go back to this recent medical marijuana being legalized in Georgia. That was moms and dads taking those sick babies down to the Gold Dome, day in and day out, getting attention to something that mattered to them. So, Senator?
So advocacy is absolutely important in this work that we do. We cannot do it alone. It takes the community. We understand that we need to expand Medicaid. We understand that we need to support our health clinics and our health departments. We understand that we don't need to close any more hospitals.
At all.
At all. But we do need the community to stand alongside us, to be, those champions and cheerleaders around having access to quality health care. It is imperative that we have those partners and experts like we have today, lifting their voices, making it known that it is not okay to close medical centers. It is not okay for our medications, and I say our medications that pertain to Black illnesses, to cost a little bit more than other. I'm trying not to go down this road, but you asked the chair of the Black Caucus to be here, I'm just saying. But it is absolutely important, and it is a priority for me as a Black woman legislator to make sure those partnerships happen, because at the end of the day, we have to save our own communities. We have to.
It's ours.
It's ours.
Howard, would you want to add something?
Well, and I wouldn't. You brought up medical marijuana. When we were debating that bill in the legislature, they were not going to add sickle cell as a... And if it wasn't for the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus standing up and saying, this bill will not go through this legislature unless you put this on the table. And this is why advocacy is important, is that we have to make sure that our voice is at the table. And we have to make sure that you as a community need to make sure that you engage with your elected official to drive change for your community. And it requires you to be there and be present.
Now, audience, you just heard two lawmakers invite you to engage them other than on that day that you go and pull the lever. And, we're in a faith-based arena, and many things that we talk about in this building from this pulpit is this whole idea of integrity, also accountability. And I think that for too long in our community, we've let that kind of slip. Particularly in the arena of this pulpit, but oftentimes also with our legislators and our public officials. And I think that I've heard it criticized of our community that we tend to be more reactive than proactive. And so although it hurt my feelings, you got to say facts because it is the truth. Like, we are much more likely to go up there and want to clown the teacher than we want to make little Johnny get his homework done. I'm just saying, my husband's a teacher. I'm sorry. I apologize. But so we've got to get into the space of being proactive. But, quite honestly, from being in the clinic, and I started off in medicine the late 90s, 2000s, and I worked at Southside Medical Center for my first 4 years. Got a wonderful education in medicine and learned about my community from the inside out. But one of the things that was often kind of sad to me is how much power my patients gave me to make decisions for their lives. And it bothered me, actually it disturbed me, because many times I was serving elders. And I'm like, I don't know what's best for you. But I think that's something that we should, I don't want to use the word empower because I don't hold the power, but I think that's one of the things that we as leaders have the responsibility to put it into our community's hands. What happens to them? It's your life. This is your community. And it's your responsibility that you steward what we've been entrusted with. And so we must call you to be accountable. We must vote, but we also must come to town halls. We must email you to say you're doing a good job, but also when things ain't going right. And we need to stay informed. And one of the things I love about, so here comes a shameless plug, Pastor Harris. One of the things I love about being here at New Life is that I feel like, for one, Pastor Harris is a leader of integrity, but also in the kinds of things he leads us in. We're in the space of dealing with generational poverty in this community. That's why we're here, because we want to break this cycle. And all of you on this stage, you represent this term that we call social determinants of health. We know that place matters, food insecurity matters, access to healthcare matters, mental health matters, the kinds of laws and policies that govern the fact that they allow 25 liquor stores on this street, but we don't have no sidewalks.
Okay.
You know, things like that. We had to have a young man down the street whose baby was killed in traffic a few years ago, and that got us a crosswalk. So things like that matter. But unless we say something and exercise our voice and have comfortable, safe spaces to have these conversations, it's not going to happen. So as you can see, I have several soapboxes. I see our time is expiring, so I want to invite Pastor Harris to come back to the stage to get ready to close us off. But to our audience, if there are some things that are sticking out to you, again, questions that you have, put it in the chat. But I'd love for you just to put in the chat one takeaway that you have today that you're going to do differently, whether it's around the policy space, if it's health and going to get your at least once a year exam for as little as $30. If you are a patient, engaging your health, being able to talk to your family. Something else that didn't come up, but we talked about it offline. Know your family history. What we don't know really can hurt us. And I know for many of us, I'm 54 years old, and I know in my family growing up, kids need to stay out of grown people business. Like to my grandma, I was always a child, even when I was grown. So I know it's hard to have those conversations, but we need to have them. We don't need to wait till dad is in the hospital and all his organs are failing for him to begin to talk to us. We need to force these conversations. We need to get active. We need to eat right. And we need to engage our legislators. So thank you, everyone, for being here today, for sharing. Again, to our audience, this was just the beginning. I know it was just enough to wet your whistle. We'll be revisiting all of these topics in the days to come. So we invite you to stay tuned to our announcements that will be coming. And with that said, I'd love to turn it over to our fearless leader, to the Reverend Dr. Marlin D. Harris. Thank you, Pastor.
I tell you what, I'm not sure how to respond to that. This has been just a phenomenal discussion. It ended way too soon because the information that's being shared is so critical for not just our physical health, but for the health of our community. We are committed here to making certain that we are healthy and whole and sane in all aspects of life, whether that's spirit, whether that's emotional, mental, physical, and so many other areas, because you are just that important. You matter that much. It doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter how much money you make or don't make, what socioeconomic backgrounds you have, or what status of education you've achieved. You matter. And if you don't take yourself seriously, not very many people will. You are important. Your life is important. Your health is important. It matters to your family. It matters to your children. It matters to your grandchildren, and even for generations that are yet to come. Taking care of you is the best thing you can do for the people that love you. And so I want to encourage you. Pay attention to everything that was shared. Get in contact with these partners that we've been blessed to partner with. So I want to give you their names again before we close. First of all, there is the HEAL Collaborative. It is a wonderful organization that is committed to bringing these kinds of discussions and these kinds of conversations, not just here in the city of Atlanta, here in Decatur, but in so many other parts of the country, in those urban communities and in underserved communities where these conversations are needed. Also, Neph Cure Kidney International, and you met a few of the Neph Cure professionals here today. Vertex Pharmaceuticals, Travere Therapeutics, as well as Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals as well. And there'll be resources from all of these partners that are currently going to be placed in our chat space, and also resource links will be given for you to connect with them, ask questions, get their information. download everything that you can download about kidney disease. One of the best things you can do is educate yourself. You heard these patient advocates and these two gentlemen who have had kidney disease and are wrestling and struggling with that now and will be doing that for the better part of their lives. But did you see how much they knew, how much they were aware and educated themselves about the disease that's impacting their body? Don't wait until you develop kidney disease to begin that education process. Do it now. Do it in a preventive way so that you will not develop that disease and so many others that's crippling the African American community. And I want to challenge you to start taking control of your health. And I'm not just speaking to you, I'm speaking to myself as well. We need to start taking control of our health. Ask the right questions. When you have an appointment with your doctor, go to that appointment. Make sure that you're educating yourself with all the free resources and education streams that are online and in so many other places. Find out those healthcare providers in your community that will see you, that will support your healthcare process, and go see them. Talk to your family members about their conditions and their medical history. What's going on with them impacts you. We talk a whole lot about generational concerns in a spiritual context, but there are generational concerns in a genetic context as well. Being sick or having a predisposition for a particular disease doesn't make you a bad person, nor does it make you irresponsible. What makes you responsible is when you identify those markers and you identify the susceptibility that you have for certain diseases and illnesses, and you take action to reverse it. You've heard a lot today about what we eat, about our diet. I can't stress that enough, and all these doctors and medical professionals have done a tremendous job, way more than I could. But I can tell you in the non-medical professional way, eat right. Fast food is not good for you. I know you enjoy the McDonald's and the Burger Kings and all the other fast food joints, but I want to put a lot of them out of business in our community because they're pumping poison into our communities and into our families and into our children. So I want to say that again. They're pumping poison into our communities and into our families and into our children. Better food options is what you need to scavenge for and look for. And we're making commitments here at our community center to provide better food options for our immediate community, even in our food boxes and the things that we give to our community to make certain that we're being responsible for how we take care of our community. And I want you to be responsible for how you take care of your family. So I'm off my soapbox. And thank you for listening. Thank you for being a part of this conversation. Don't stop the conversation. It continues. We've made the critical investment of making this a year-long process. And so we have acquired staff as well as funding to support this process. Reach out to our community center, and here's how you can find us at www.nlcc-atl.org. I'll give you that again. It is www.nlcc-atl.org. If you just reach out to us, all of our contact information is there. You can learn more about our chronic kidney disease program and how you can be impacted and bettered by it. Let's pray as we spend our time closing our session talking to God. Father, thank you for allowing us the benefit of being together today and for your blessings over our time. Thank you for all of these professionals, these men and women who have spent time this morning sharing with us knowledge and information that we need to better our lives. We pray your blessings upon their practices, your blessings upon their lives, upon their individual health journeys. Thank you for our senator for coming to talk about policy, that we have an advocate even in the halls of state legislatures so that we might be able to see produce and direction being given from the highest levels of our state government down to the lowest levels of our street corners. We thank you, God, for how you have blessed us to hear today. Now give us the courage to act out what we have heard and put action to the things we've discussed, to the end that your name is glorified and honored. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. Do me a favor before we leave. Put in the chat space a big thank you to all of our guests, all of our panelists, to everyone that put this together, all of our partners that I've mentioned to you earlier, and also to our media team for doing such a wonderful job being here on a Saturday morning to make certain that we can present this conversation and panel to you. God bless. We love you much. We'll see you the next time we talk about a health concern. Bye-bye.